Imagine standing in a crowded marketplace 2,000 years ago. The noise, the chaos, the endless distractions. Now fast forward to today. The scenery has changed, but the human struggle remains eerily familiar. We still grapple with insecurity, stress, and the relentless pursuit of validation. What if I told you the antidote to these modern anxieties was written by a philosopher who lived in ancient Rome? Seneca, one of history's most brilliant Stoic minds, left behind wisdom so timeless it feels like it was crafted for our era of constant noise and fleeting attention. His words don't just survive, they thrive, because they cut straight to the heart of what it means to be unshakable in a world that's always trying to shake you. This isn't about dusty old texts or abstract theories. Seneca's lessons are weapons for the battles we fight every single day. The fear of rejection, the hunger for approval, the exhaustion of chasing external validation. What makes his ideas so revolutionary is how practical they are. He doesn't just tell you to be strong. He hands you the blueprint, and here's the surprising twist. The same principles that fortify your inner resilience also make you magnetically attractive, not in the superficial sense, but in a way that draws people to your presence, your confidence, your unflinching calm. That's the hidden power of Stoicism. It's not about suppressing emotions, it's about mastering them so thoroughly that your strength becomes your signature. By the end of this journey, you'll have 25 of Seneca's sharpest tools to reshape your mindset, from turning adversity into fuel to radiating a quiet confidence that needs no explanation. These aren't quick fixes or empty affirmations. They're battle-tested strategies refined over centuries, waiting for you to wield them. Whether you're facing a personal crisis, a professional setback, or just the daily grind of life, Seneca's voice cuts through the noise with startling clarity. So let's step into the mind of a Stoic master, because the life you want isn't about waiting for storms to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain, unbothered, unstoppable, and utterly yourself. Here's how Seneca's first lesson cuts through the clutter of modern life. Most of what drains us isn't the problem itself. It's the energy we waste wrestling with things we can't change. Picture this: you're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting. Your heart races, your grip tightens on the wheel, but honking, cursing, or stressing won't magically clear the road. That's the illusion Seneca shatters. The traffic beyond your control, your reaction, that's your empire. This isn't passive resignation, it's strategic focus. Think of a colleague taking credit for your idea at work. You could obsess over their betrayal, or you could channel that energy into crafting even bolder ideas they can't ignore. Seneca's framework transforms victims into architects. Social media likes, a boss's mood, even the weather. None of these belong to you, but your effort, your integrity, your choice to rise above pettiness. Those are your sovereign territory. The real magic happens when you stop letting external chaos dictate your inner world. A missed promotion, a rude comment, a cancelled plan, these aren't judgments on your worth. They're simply events. Seneca's wisdom turns life's noise into background static, freeing you to act rather than react. Modern psychology echoes this. Anxiety plummets when we stop shouldering responsibility for the uncontrollable. Practice this today. Next time frustration bubbles up, ask, is this mine to solve? If not, release it like a balloon into the sky. Watch how much lighter you feel when your energy flows only where it can actually build something. That's the birth of true resilience, not from avoiding storms, but from knowing which battles are yours to fight. Now let's make this Stoic superpower tangible. Journaling was Seneca's secret weapon, not just writing, but interrogating your own mind. Try this tonight. Grab a notebook and split the page into 2 columns. On the left, list everything that agitated you today: the delayed flight, your coworker's snark, the rain ruining your plans. On the right, challenge each item with Seneca's razor. Did I control this? If the answer's no, cross it out with a black marker. That visceral act trains your brain to stop wasting energy on mental quicksand. One executive client of mine did this for 30 days. At first, her left column overflowed traffic jams, her toddler's tantrums, stock market dips. By week 3, she caught herself laughing mid-frustration at a cancelled meeting. "Why am I angry at the weather?" she scribbled. That shift didn't just lower her stress, it freed up hours of mental bandwidth she'd been spending on imaginary battles. Reframing is where this gets transformative. Say your date ghosts you. The untrained mind spirals. Was I boring, unattractive? Seneca's lens flips the script. Their actions reveal their character, not yours. You controlled showing up authentically. Their response belongs to them. A restaurant owner used this when a critic slammed his menu. Instead of obsessing over the review, he focused on what was his improving one dish daily. 6 months later, that critic became a regular. Spotting controllables is like building a muscle. Start small. When your phone battery dies, don't rage at the technology. Ask what was yours. Did you ignore low battery warnings? That's your territory. A teacher I worked with applied this to classroom chaos. Instead of fixating on unruly students, their choice, she poured energy into crafting irresistible lessons, her domain. Attendance skyrocketed. These aren't theoretical hacks, they're time-tested tools. The journaling practice alone can rewire your default reactions in weeks. What's fascinating is how this Stoic filter exposes our hidden assumptions. We often feel entitled to control perfect weather, flawless people, predictable outcomes. Seneca's clarity dissolves that illusion, leaving only what's yours, your effort, your integrity, your next move. That's where real power lives. Try today's experiment. Carry a coin in your pocket. Every time frustration hits, flip it. Heads ask if it's controllable. Tails ask what part is yours. By sundown, you'll notice a pattern. Most suffering stems from clutching what was never yours to hold. The modern world bombards us with one toxic message: happiness means avoiding pain at all costs. Seneca flips that script entirely. His philosophy wasn't about dodging adversity, but diving into it with open arms. Amor Fati, the love of fate, isn't passive surrender. It's the art of seeing every setback, even the brutal ones, as raw material for your evolution. Picture Seneca himself, exiled to Corsica under trumped-up charges. A lesser man would have crumbled, but in his letters he describes the island's rugged beauty, the clarity solitude brought him, even calling exile the universe correcting my course. That's Amor Fati in action. He wasn't pretending hardship felt good, he was mining it for purpose. Compare that to today's good vibes only culture, where pain is treated like a glitch rather than a teacher. A client of mine, a startup founder, embodied this shift after her company collapsed. Instead of plastering over grief with forced optimism, she sat with the loss. "This isn't the end," she journaled. "It's the plot twist my arrogance needed." 2 years later, her second venture thrived because she'd let failure rewrite her approach. Here's where Stoicism parts ways with pop psychology. Toxic positivity shouts, "Just stay happy," while whispering, "Your pain is shameful." Amor Fati says, "This hurt belongs." Let it carve depth into you. Take illness. Seneca's chronic asthma could have been his prison. Instead, he called it "my professor," forcing him to value each breath. Modern research echoes this. Patients who frame illness as a meaningful challenge, not just a curse, report higher resilience. The practice is simpler than you'd think. Next time life derails your plans, ask Seneca's question: what if this happened for me, not to me? A musician who lost his hearing in one ear reframed it as training his other ear to hear nuance. A writer blocked by pandemic isolation used the stillness to study human voices more deeply. Even Nero's tyranny, which ultimately killed Seneca, became fuel for his final masterpiece, Letters from a Stoic, written knowing death was near. This isn't about romanticizing suffering. It's about recognizing that the best versions of ourselves are often forged in fires we didn't choose. Your breakup, your missed opportunity, your betrayal, these aren't obstacles to your story. They're the chisel shaping it. Start small. When your coffee spills, instead of cursing, ask what it teaches: patience, adaptability, humor. Amor Fati turns life's sharpest edges into whetstones for your character. Historical parallels abound. Beethoven composed his brightest symphonies as deafness closed in. Mandela transformed prison into a crucible for leadership. The pattern's clear. Those who stop fighting reality start shaping it. Your fate isn't happening to you, it's conspiring for you. The catch: you have to lean in close enough to hear its whispers. Try this tonight. List 3 current struggles beneath each. Write, "This is preparing me for," fill in the blank with ruthless honesty. A strained relationship teaching me boundaries, a financial pinch forcing creativity. Amor Fati is the ultimate rebellion, a refusal to let circumstances define your spirit. Seneca's exile birthed timeless wisdom. Your storm, whatever it is, holds that same fertile soil. Stop waiting for clear skies. Plant your feet in the rain and grow. Seneca's genius lies in revealing a counterintuitive truth: the most turbulent moments of your life are secretly your greatest allies. Think of a blacksmith's forge. The metal doesn't become a blade by lying in sunlight. It's the hammer strikes, the searing heat, the relentless pressure that reshapes it into something unbreakable. Modern neuroscience now confirms what Stoics knew: struggle isn't just inevitable, it's chemically necessary. Every time you face a setback, your brain releases BDNF, a protein that literally strengthens neural pathways. Adversity isn't breaking you, it's rewiring you. Take the story of a marathon runner who shattered her ankle weeks before a race. Instead of resenting the injury, she studied race strategy from her couch, visualizing every mile. When she finally healed, she ran a personal best. Why? The forced pause had sharpened her mental game. Or consider tech founders who analyze every failed product launch to pinpoint exactly what the market rejected. They're practicing Amor Fati without realizing it, mining disappointment for diamonds. Here's how to activate this mindset today. Start with micro reframes. Your train gets cancelled. That's an hour to finally read that book gathering dust. Your critic leaves a harsh comment. They've just handed you a free audit of your blind spots. Even chronic pain can become a teacher. One writer with back injuries credits his condition for forcing him to sit still long enough to finish his novel. The key isn't denying frustration, it's letting it coexist with curiosity. Ask, what's this situation revealing that comfort hid from me? Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman's research shows that labeling emotions, literally saying, "This is frustration" or "This is fear," reduces their grip on your amygdala. Pair that with Seneca's journaling trick. Next to every hardship, write "gift" in bold letters, then brainstorm 3 ways it's secretly serving you. A chef burned his hand badly during service. His gift list included learning pain management and appreciating my team's quick response. Within months, that accident became the reason he opened a safer, more efficient kitchen. Ready for the 7-day challenge. Each morning, identify one irritation, a delayed package, a miscommunication, and vocalize this phrase: "I get to experience this because it's training me in." Fill the blank with whatever skill the obstacle demands: patience, creativity, assertiveness. By day 3, you'll catch yourself reflexively scanning hardships for hidden curriculum. A startup CEO used this to transform investor rejections into a masterclass in persuasion. He framed each no as feedback, sharpening his pitch. By his 50th attempt, venture capitalists were fighting to fund him. This isn't magical thinking, it's strategic repurposing. When a storm uproots a tree, carpenters don't mourn, they carve the fallen trunk into tables that last generations. Your setbacks are that raw timber. The rejections, the heartbreaks, the plans that implode, they aren't proof the universe hates you. They're invitations to build something sturdier than what you originally imagined. Amor Fati whispers, "You think this is the end? Wait till you see what I'm making you capable of." there's a strange comfort in staring down the monsters under your bed. Seneca called it premeditatio malorum, the deliberate practice of mentally rehearsing life's worst-case scenarios before they happen. At first glance, it sounds morbid. Why dwell on potential disasters? But here's the paradox Seneca uncovered. When you confront your fears head-on, they lose their fangs. Modern therapists call this exposure therapy, and it's why astronauts train in simulators, why firefighters drill for emergencies, and why the most resilient people you know seem oddly calm in chaos. They've already lived through the worst in their minds. Try this now. Close your eyes and picture the thing you're most afraid of. Maybe it's losing your job, a relationship ending, or failing publicly. Sit with that image until your pulse kicks up. Now ask, what would I do next? Not in a panicked way, but strategically. You'd update your resume, lean on friends, or salvage lessons from the failure. That's the alchemy of negative visualization. It turns vague dread into actionable steps. A CEO client of mine does this weekly, scripting mock press releases for hypothetical scandals. It sounds extreme, but when his company faced real PR crisis last year, he executed damage control with eerie calm because he'd already walked that path a dozen times in his mind. Science backs this up. A Harvard study found that patients who mentally rehearsed surgery recovered faster than those who avoided thinking about it. Their brains had already mapped the emotional terrain, so the actual event felt familiar, not traumatic. Seneca took this further. He'd visualize losing his wealth, his status, even his life, not to wallow, but to strip those losses of their power over him. When Emperor Nero finally ordered his death, Seneca's legendary composure wasn't stoic suppression. It was the result of decades spent mentally unshackling himself from the fear of mortality. Here's your 5-minute drill for today. Pick one fear, a career, health, rejection, and write the full story of it coming true. Detail how you'd adapt. A musician terrified of losing her voice crafted a backup plan to teach composition. 6 months later, when vocal nodes forced her offstage, she pivoted seamlessly because her nightmare had become a roadmap. The goal isn't to manifest disaster, it's to expose the lie that you couldn't survive it. Negative visualization works because it exploits a quirk of human psychology. We overestimate pain's duration and underestimate our capacity to endure it. Think of heartbreak. In the moment, it feels endless, but recall your last one. You're still here, wiser. Seneca's exercise fast-forwards you to that resilience before the storm hits. A startup founder I mentor keeps a disaster diary where he logs hypothetical catastrophes and his planned responses. Last quarter, when his top engineer quit, he didn't spiral. He flipped to page 17 and implemented the retention strategy he'd drafted months prior. This practice has a surprising side effect: gratitude. Regularly envisioning loss makes you viscerally appreciate what you have now. Seneca would sleep on the floor occasionally to remember the luxury of a bed. Modern equivalent: try deleting social media for a day to rediscover real connection, or fasting to savor your next meal. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. We take comforts for granted until they're gone. Premeditatio malorum short-circuits that cycle. Your challenge tonight: set a timer for 10 minutes and mentally demolish your life. Lose the job, break the bone. Abandon the dream, then rebuild it step by step on paper. You'll uncover two truths. First, most fears are paper tigers. Second, you're far more resourceful than your anxiety claims. That's the gift Seneca offers: not a life free of storms, but the unshakable knowledge that you'll always know how to sail. Negative visualization does something extraordinary. It turns the mundane into the miraculous. By mentally stripping away what we take for granted, we suddenly see ordinary moments with fresh eyes. That morning coffee, imagine losing your sense of taste. The hum of your fridge, picture sudden silence after a power outage. Seneca didn't just practice this to steel himself against loss, he used it to uncover joy hiding in plain sight. Modern research calls this the hedonic treadmill, the way we adapt to pleasures until they become invisible. But here's the twist. Neuroscientists found that intermittent deprivation, voluntarily going without, resets your capacity for delight. Take sleep, for example. One study had participants rate their gratitude for their beds after 2 nights on a camping mat. Their appreciation skyrocketed not just temporarily, but for weeks. That's the power of consciously creating loss. A tech executive I know does this quarterly. He spends a weekend without his smartphone, not as a detox, but as a deliberate reminder of how much connection it enables. Every notification ding becomes music when you've heard silence. He told me, this practice isn't about manufactured scarcity. It's about breaking the trance of taking things for granted. A teacher in Oslo has her students write obituaries for their possessions, eulogizing their laptops as if they'd been destroyed. The result, one student described typing afterward as feeling each key like a heartbeat. Even relationships benefit. Psychologist Arthur Aaron's studies show couples who occasionally imagine losing their partner report deeper affection and fewer conflicts. Try this tonight. Pick 5 background comforts: your running water, your favorite sweater, the ability to call a friend, and spend 1 minute per item visualizing its absence. Then reactivate it. Turn the faucet on and truly feel the water. Pull that sweater close and notice its texture. This isn't just mindfulness, it's alchemy, transforming ordinary privilege into visceral wonder. The Stoics knew a secret modern life obscures. Gratitude isn't passive. It's a muscle that grows strongest when exercised against resistance. By letting yourself lose what you love in your mind, you never truly lose it at all. You just relearn how to see it. Seneca saw wealth for what it truly is, a tool that either serves your freedom or becomes your jailer. Picture ancient Rome's elite drowning in gold-encrusted villas and feasts so extravagant they'd vomit just to keep eating. Now scroll through today's social media, where flexing designer labels and luxury cars has become its own twisted sport. The scenery changed, but the sickness remains the same, mistaking possessions for identity. Here's the Stoic wake-up call. Money is neither good nor evil. It's neutral like fire. Held at the right distance, it warms you. Gripped too tightly, it burns. Modern research confirms Seneca's warning. A Yale study found that once basic needs are met, additional wealth contributes almost nothing to lasting happiness. Yet we keep chasing the next purchase, the next upgrade, as if a new phone could fill the void where purpose should be. A hedge fund manager I coached embodied this trap. His penthouse, yacht, and watches worth more than most homes left him emptier than when he'd started. I confused net worth with self-worth, he admitted. That's the insidious lie materialism sells, that you are what you own. Minimalism isn't about deprivation, it's about sovereignty. Seneca practiced voluntary poverty, periodically living on bread and water to remember how little he truly needed. Modern equivalents: try the 1 in 1 out rule. For every new item entering your home, another must leave. Or the 30-day test: when tempted by a non-essential purchase, wait a month. Most cravings fade like mist. A fashion editor in Paris applied this ruthlessly. She now owns 33 total clothing items, yet feels more expressive than when her closet overflowed with unworn trends. Consumerism preys on our deepest insecurities: the fear of being ordinary, of missing out, of not measuring up. But here's a secret the advertisers won't tell you: owning less means being owed less. No crushing debt, no keeping up with influencers whose lives are as curated as museum exhibits. A software engineer who sold his 80% unused belongings described the aftermath as psychological defragmentation. Suddenly, his mind had space to create rather than consume. Detaching worth from wealth starts with brutal honesty. Track every dollar spent last month. Now categorize what bought momentary dopamine versus lasting value. You'll spot patterns, perhaps the stress relief shopping sprees or the status symbol dinners. Then employ Seneca's deathbed lens. Imagine looking back from your final moments. Will you cherish memories of transactions or moments of connection, growth, contribution? A dying billionaire's most common regret isn't missing more deals, it's missing more sunsets. True richness, Seneca argued, is wanting what you already have. Try this tonight. Walk through your home touching objects as if seeing them for the last time. That chipped mug from your grandmother, priceless. The sofa where your kids build forts, a throne. Gratitude turns ordinary possessions into treasures no billionaire can outbid. The goal isn't to reject wealth, it's to master it, to spend extravagantly on what matters: education, experiences, generosity, and relentlessly cut the rest. Because freedom isn't owning the world, it's needing almost nothing from it. Time slips through our fingers like sand, constantly moving, impossible to grasp. Yet how many of us treat our days as if they're infinite? Seneca saw this illusion for what it was, a silent thief. In his letters, he wrote that people guard their money fiercely but squander their time as if it's worthless. Fast forward 2,000 years and nothing's changed. We wear busyness like a badge of honor, filling every second with notifications and multitasking, mistaking motion for meaning. But here's the Stoic truth. Being stretched thin isn't a sign of importance, it's a surrender of sovereignty over your one irreplaceable resource. What makes Seneca's take on time so radical is his distinction between mere activity and aliveness. Picture two entrepreneurs. One spends 12 hours a day bouncing between meetings and emails. The other dedicates 3 focused hours to building something enduring. Who's richer? The answer flips conventional wisdom on its head. A client of mine, a high-powered lawyer, discovered this after tracking her time for a month. She was working 60 hours weekly, but only 19 of those hours involved deep, meaningful work. The rest reacting, rearranging, and recovering from distractions. That's the modern tragedy. We've conflated being busy with being productive, mistaking a crowded calendar for a purposeful life. Stoic time blocking cuts through this noise. It's not about scheduling every minute, it's about assigning weight to what truly weighs. Take Seneca's morning ritual. He'd begin each day by asking, what must not be left undone? One thing, not 10. Then he'd protect that priority like a lion guarding its cub. Try this tomorrow. Before your phone lights up with demands, carve 90 minutes for your most meaningful work. Writing that proposal, practicing that skill, solving that problem. Guard that block like sacred ground. A novelist I know calls this temple time, hours when he disappears into his craft, leaving his phone in another room. Over 6 months, those guarded blocks produced more than his previous 2 years of fragmented effort. Here's where modern tools meet ancient wisdom. Use technology to defend your time, not fracture it. Apps like Freedom or Cold Turkey aren't just productivity hacks, they're Stoic shields. One CEO client schedules Seneca hours twice daily, 45 minutes of uninterrupted focus, signaled by a candle he lights, his modern version of an hourglass. The flame's presence reminds him this time is non-negotiable. Research from the University of California, Irvine found that after just 20 minutes of focused work, it takes 23 minutes to regain deep concentration. Every interruption isn't just a pause, it's a theft of your future. But what about obligations? Seneca had an answer for that too. He wrote that we must sell our time wisely, exchanging it only for what enriches our souls or sustains our bodies. A graphic designer applied this by auditing every client relationship. She calculated her hourly rate not just in dollars but in energy. One high-paying client who demanded constant revisions and late-night calls. Fired, I was trading my life force for cash, she realized. Now she works fewer hours but earns more, and her best work attracts clients who respect her boundaries. The ultimate test is the deathbed audit. Imagine yourself decades from now, reflecting on how you spent your time. Will you wish you'd attended more meetings or scrolled more feeds? Or will you crave those moments you truly lived? the conversations that deepened relationships, the projects that ignited your passion, the quiet mornings savoring existence. That's the piercing clarity Stoicism offers. Time isn't just passing, it's being exchanged for what you'll one day call your life. Start small. Tonight, list 3 time expenditures from today that felt hollow. Tomorrow, replace just one with something that would make your future self nod in approval. That's the Stoic path, not chasing more hours, but making each hour count like the finite gold it is. Imagine standing before a mirror not to check your appearance but to measure your soul. That's the essence of Seneca's mirror test, a daily audit of whether your actions match your professed values. Most people live in quiet contradiction, preaching kindness while gossiping, championing honesty while twisting truths for convenience. Seneca called this fracture the root of self-distrust. No one can be confident who is at war with themselves, he wrote. Authentic magnetism doesn't come from perfected performance. It flows from the unshakable stillness of knowing your hands and heart move in sync. Modern psychology validates this ancient insight. Cognitive dissonance, the mental tension of holding conflicting beliefs, drains more energy than most physical labor. Think of the executive who advocates work-life balance yet brags about all-nighters, or the influencer preaching authenticity while filtering every photo. That gap between who they are and who they pretend to be leaks charisma like a punctured tire. Contrast that with people who carry themselves with effortless gravity. Their secret, they've dissolved the exhausting divide between public persona and private conduct. Here's how to apply Seneca's nightly ritual. Before sleep, light a candle or turn off screens. Create a space for brutal honesty. Ask 3 questions. Where did I compromise today? Where did I courageously align? What would Seneca say if he'd witnessed my choices? A finance director I coached used this practice after realizing his team didn't trust his open-door policy because he'd subtly roll his eyes during meetings. His journal revelations were painful but transformative. Told Sarah I valued innovation, then shot down her idea without consideration. Seneca would call me a salesman of false promises. Within weeks, his team's engagement scores skyrocketed, not because he became perfect, but because they sensed his genuine effort to close the integrity gap. The magic lies in specificity. Don't settle for "I was impatient." Drill down. Interrupted Maya 3 times because her pace frustrated me, then complained about leaders not listening. This precision shines light on behavioral patterns invisible in broad strokes. A trial lawyer discovered through these reflections that her zealous advocacy often crossed into needless aggression. Her nightly notes became a roadmap for recalibration. Did I attack the argument or the person? Would Seneca respect this tactic or see it as insecurity in disguise? Integrity isn't about never failing, it's about refusing to disguise your failures. Ancient Stoics recorded their moral stumbles with unflinching detail. Seneca chronicled his own greed, hypocrisy, and temper not to self-flagellate but to excavate. Modern equivalent, try voice memos. A startup founder record 60-second nightly confessionals. Today I took credit for Derek's idea during the pitch. Rationalized it as team effort, but my gut knows better. The act of speaking these truths aloud trains your subconscious to spot misalignments faster. What makes this practice revolutionary is its compound effect. Like lifting weights for your moral spine, daily integrity checks strengthen your ability to choose principle over convenience in real time. A nurse practicing the mirror test caught herself about to fake a chart reading, just this once because she was behind schedule. The split-second memory of that night's journal stopped her hand. Couldn't face Seneca if I held myself accountable after cutting corners, she told me. That's the Stoic secret. Integrity isn't a grand gesture. It's the sum of microscopic choices witnessed only by you and your reflection. Your challenge tonight: place a coin on your bedside table. Hold it as you answer Seneca's 3 questions. If you can honestly say your hand stayed clean, move it to a jar. Watch the pile grow, each coin representing a day lived in alignment. The real treasure isn't the money, it's the quiet confidence of knowing you don't need to check over your shoulder because the person in the mirror has already seen everything and still respects you. Anger might feel like fire in your veins, but Seneca saw it for what it truly is, a brief insanity that burns the hand that holds it. Picture those viral road rage videos where someone screams over a parking spot, only to crumple in regret when the camera starts rolling. That whiplash from fury to shame, Seneca called it the mind's fever, a temporary sickness where logic vanishes and recklessness takes the wheel. Modern brain scans prove him right. During anger, your prefrontal cortex, the decision-making center, goes dark like a power outage, while your amygdala hijacks control like a toddler with a grenade. The ancient Stoic and contemporary science agree, rage isn't strength, it's your nervous system malfunctioning. Here's where anger gets revolutionary. Seneca didn't just diagnose the problem, he prescribed a vaccine. His pause and perspective technique works like an emergency brake for emotions. Take that infamous video of a man kicking his own car's dented door after losing a traffic duel. Now apply Seneca's three-question intervention. Will this matter in a year? What would my calmest self do right now? What's the cost of surrendering to this feeling? A corporate lawyer used this method when a rival sabotaged her promotion. Instead of storming into HR, she waited 3 breaths and asked Seneca's questions. By the third, she realized retaliation would only cement her as emotional, the very stereotype she fought against. Her calm countermove, outperforming the sabotage with results no one could ignore. Neuroscience validates this approach. The arousal curve shows anger peaks within 90 seconds if you don't feed it with mental gasoline. Watch those road rage clips again. Notice how the yelling escalates only when each party keeps throwing verbal logs on the fire. Seneca's pause disrupts that combustion cycle. A study in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that just 6 seconds of deliberate breathing lowers anger's volume by over 40%. That's why elite military units train in tactical breathing, not to suppress emotion, but to create space for strategy to reawaken. But here's the twist most miss: anger isn't the enemy. It's an alarm system. Seneca distinguished between the initial spark, which we can't control, and the decision to fan it into a blaze, which we absolutely can. A firefighter doesn't curse the smoke detector for beeping, they follow it to the flame. Similarly, anger's heat can signal real injustices if you let it cool enough to see clearly. A teacher in Chicago transformed her classroom after applying this. When students acted out instead of snapping, she'd say, "My anger is telling me something's wrong here. Let's figure out what." That shift from adversary to investigator cut disciplinary referrals by 70%. Your challenge: next time anger flares, treat it like a lab specimen. Before reacting, jot down 3 observations. Where do I feel this in my body? What story am I telling myself about this situation? What's one fact that contradicts that story? A startup CEO used this during a partner's betrayal. His first scribble: chest tight. Story: he's laughing at me. Fact: he looked scared when I confronted him. That tiny gap between reaction and action revealed the truth. His partner wasn't malicious, just desperate to hide a financial mistake. What could have torched a partnership instead forged a deeper honesty. Seneca's ultimate insight: anger is a performance we put on for an audience of one. We think we're punishing others, but the only person truly burned is the one holding the match. The antidote isn't bottling it up, it's seeing through the illusion that rage ever serves you. Like realizing the nightmare isn't real the moment you wake up. Anger left unchecked is a wildfire, but harnessed, it becomes the forge that shapes steel. Seneca recognized this duality better than most. While he warned against rage's destructive power, he also saw its potential as fuel for righteous action. Consider the difference between a protester smashing windows and one channeling outrage into organizing voter registration drives. Both feel the same initial spark, but the latter transforms heat into light. That's the Stoic secret. Emotion isn't the enemy, misapplication is. Modern psychology calls this emotional agility. Serena Williams' 2018 US Open outburst could have defined her career instead. She redirected that intensity into a crusade for equality in tennis. Post-match, she funneled her frustration into founding initiatives to support female athletes. Anger showed me where the cracks were, she later said. But building bridges required a cooler head. Seneca would have applauded this pivot. His writings distinguish between impulse, the raw, unfiltered reaction, and purpose, the strategic direction of energy. A study of Olympic athletes found that those who reframed pre-competition anger as focused determination outperformed peers who either suppressed or erupted. The key lies in inserting a single question between feeling and action. What does this emotion want to fix? A teacher in Detroit transformed her indignation over outdated textbooks into a grant-writing marathon that secured new resources for her entire district. At first, I just wanted to scream at the school board, she admitted. Then I realized anger without a blueprint is just noise. This mirrors Seneca's advice to Roman officials: let indignation identify problems, but let reason engineer solutions. Activists exemplify this principle best. Rosa Parks' quiet defiance on that Montgomery bus wasn't the absence of anger. It was anger distilled into unstoppable resolve. Modern organizers use similar tactics. When a 2020 protest leader noticed crowds growing volatile, she directed them toward voter registration tables. Fire melts ice, she told reporters, but only water can carve canyons. That's Stoic anger, not diluted, but deliberately channeled. Even in personal conflicts, this redirection changes everything. A startup CTO used Seneca's method when his co-founder betrayed him. Instead of lashing out, he wrote a blistering letter, then locked it away. The words clarified what hurt, he explained. But sending them would have burned a bridge I later needed to rebuild. That letter became his compass for setting boundaries, not a weapon. Try this reframe today. When anger strikes, pause just long enough to ask, is there a version of this feeling that could build instead of break? You'll discover what athletes and activists know. The hottest fires, when controlled, can temper the strongest steel. Seneca once wrote that we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, a truth that echoes across centuries. Think about your own inner circle for a moment. Are they the kind of people who sharpen your thoughts like a whetstone, or do they subtly sand down your edges to fit their comfort? This isn't just about morality, it's neuroscience. Studies show that our brains mirror neurons unconsciously mimic the behaviors and emotional patterns of those around us. Spend hours with chronic complainers and your default setting becomes discontent. Surround yourself with lifelong learners and curiosity becomes second nature. Conducting a social audit starts with brutal honesty. Grab a notebook and list everyone you interact with weekly. Next to each name, mark whether they fall into one of 3 categories: elevators, equalizers, or anchors. Elevators challenge you to grow, like the friend who nudges you to publish your writing or the colleague who shares skills beyond your job description. Equalizers meet you where you are comfortable but not complacent, like gym buddies who match your pace but don't let you skip leg day. Anchors, they're the ones who subtly or not so subtly pull you toward stagnation. The coworker who rolls their eyes at your ambitions, the relative who weaponizes guilt to keep you small. A tech entrepreneur I coached discovered something startling during his audit. His inner circle included a childhood friend who mocked his startup dreams as delusional. Yet he'd kept the friendship out of loyalty. When he finally created distance, his productivity soared. It wasn't just his words, he realized. It was the invisible weight of his doubt slowing me down. But here's where Seneca's wisdom digs deeper. It's not just about cutting ties, it's about intentional replacement. For every anchor you release, consciously seek an elevator. If you're trying to build discipline, join a pre-dawn running group. Need intellectual stimulation? Start a book club with members who debate ideas, not gossip. A sculptor in Rome transformed her career this way. After removing friends who called her art a cute hobby, she began attending gallery openings alone. Within months, she'd connected with mentors who pushed her into professional exhibitions. The hardest part isn't pruning relationships, it's confronting our own complicity. Sometimes we keep anchors because their lowered standards make us feel accomplished by comparison, or we fear outstripping old friends, leaving shared histories behind. Seneca called this the poverty of low expectations. A banker grappling with this realized his poker nights reinforced cynical views about work and relationships. He didn't ditch his friends, he shifted the activity. Instead of cards, they now attend quarterly volunteer trips. The same crew, but the context reshaped their conversations. Practical tip: institute a vibe check before social plans. Ask, will I feel energized or depleted after this? If it's the latter, renegotiate the terms. A shorter visit, a different activity, or sometimes a graceful exit. One writer uses a Stoic filter for new acquaintances. She observes, do they speak with integrity about absent friends? Do they celebrate others' wins? These small tests reveal character faster than any resume. Remember, curating your circle isn't elitism, it's self-preservation. You wouldn't let someone pour sludge into your morning coffee. Why let them pour negativity into your mental space? The ancient Stoics knew what modern science confirms. You can't rise to your ambitions while shackled to someone else's limitations. Your relationships should be a greenhouse for your potential, not a cage for your growth. Silence was Seneca's secret weapon in a Rome buzzing with political schemers and professional flatterers. While others rushed to fill every pause with words, he mastered the art of strategic restraint not as weakness but as a disciplined choice. Imagine a general withholding his finest troops until the perfect moment. That's how Seneca viewed silence, a reserve of power most people squander in their hunger to be heard. Fast forward to today, where social media rewards constant noise, and you'll see why this lesson cuts deeper than ever. Consider the last argument you witnessed online or offline. Chances are it evolved into a volley of reactions, each person waiting to speak rather than listening. Seneca called this the diarrhea of the tongue, where words spill out uncontrolled, diluting their impact. His alternative, the pause. When provoked, he'd let the insult hang in the air like a challenge unanswered. Not out of passivity, but to expose the emptiness of cheap shots. A modern parallel: picture a CEO during a hostile queue and a session. The audience braces for defensiveness, but she simply nods, lets the aggressive question settle, then responds with measured clarity. That 3-second silence does more than compose her thoughts. It strips the attacker's words of their intended sting. Strategic silence also serves as a mirror. In Seneca's time, wealthy Romans hired philosophers not just to lecture, but to listen, really listen, as their patrons wrestled with ethical dilemmas. Today, we've replaced this with therapists and coaches, but the principle remains. True growth happens in the spaces between speeches. A startup founder told me how his mentor's silence transformed their sessions. I'd ramble excuses for failures and he'd just wait. That quiet forced me to hear my own BS. This is Seneca's silent interrogation, where withholding reaction compels others and yourself to confront uncomfortable truths. Let's shatter a myth. Silence isn't about suppression, it's curation. Think of a photographer who doesn't snap every possible shot but waits for the perfect light. Similarly, words gain weight when they're rare. A trial attorney I know uses this tactic during cross-examinations. After a witness lies, she doesn't immediately pounce. She lets the jury sit with the deception, allowing its absurdity to become self-evident. That's the power Seneca harnessed. Sometimes the strongest rebuttal is the one you don't voice. Now the counterintuitive twist: silence can be your most eloquent teacher. Seneca spent hours in quiet self-debate, arguing both sides of his moral struggles without an audience. Modern research on solitary reflection shows it boosts emotional regulation more than venting. Try this adaptation. Next time you're seething over an insult, don't draft that angry text. Open your Notes app and argue both positions, your grievance versus the offender's possible perspective. Like Seneca scribbling in his scrolls, you'll often find the heat dissipates as reason takes the podium. The ultimate test, the 30-day silence challenge. Not monastic vows, but deliberate habits. Pause 5 seconds before answering questions. Scroll past 3 provocative posts without engaging. End 1 daily conversation by simply listening. A journalist who tried this reported unexpected shift. Sources shared more when she stopped filling gaps with follow-ups, and online trolls moved on when deprived of her reactions. Seneca would nod knowingly. The loudest person in the room isn't the most powerful. It's the one comfortable enough with quiet to let fools reveal themselves. In an age screaming for attention, your silence isn't just absence, it's your signature. Death sits at every banquet and whispers in every lover's ear, not as a specter to fear, but as the wisest teacher you'll never meet. Seneca turned this truth into a daily practice, memento mori, the art of keeping death close as your most candid advisor. While modern culture treats mortality like an awkward guest we avoid mentioning, the Stoics set a place for it at life's table. Steve Jobs captured this perfectly when he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." That's the paradox Seneca revealed. Death isn't life's opposite, it's the compass that gives life its direction. Picture 2 versions of yourself. One drifts through days, deferring dreams for a hypothetical someday. The other wakes each morning with the visceral knowledge that time is finite, not as morbid weight, but as liberation. A client of mine, a corporate lawyer, hung a vintage hourglass on his desk after reading Seneca. "Watching those grains fall doesn't depress me," he said. "It shocks me out of meetings that should have been emails and small talk that should have been soul talk." Within months, he'd negotiated remote work to travel with his aging father, a trip he'd postponed for 5 years until death's whisper grew too loud to ignore. The ancient Stoics took this further with a practice modern psychology now validates: negative visualization for gratitude. Seneca would imagine losing his home, his status, even his loved ones, not to dwell in despair, but to jolt himself awake to their present preciousness. Try it now. Close your eyes and picture your life without your partner's laugh, your best friend's counsel, or the view from your favorite window. When you reopen them, notice how the ordinary suddenly gleams like gold. A hospice nurse I interviewed called this the terminal diagnosis effect. Patients who receive limited timelines often experience an eerie clarity, dropping grudges and embracing joy with urgency. Her question haunts me: why wait for the doctor's verdict to live like every moment counts? Petty conflicts wither under death's gaze. Ever notice how trivial arguments about dishes or traffic vanish when real crisis strikes? Seneca engineered that perspective shift proactively. When annoyed by a colleague's tardiness or a friend's forgetfulness, he'd ask, "Will this matter on my deathbed?" 99 times out of 100, the answer vaporizes resentment. A tech CEO applies this by keeping a eulogy notepad in his pocket. Whenever office politics tempt him to retaliate, he scribbles how he'd want that interaction remembered at his funeral. The result, he's gained a reputation for unflappable grace while covertly training his team to elevate their own conduct. Here's the practice that makes this tangible: the last time meditation. Each night, reflect on an ordinary moment, your child's sticky hands grabbing yours, the smell of morning coffee, and imagine it's the final occurrence. A novelist friend does this with her creative process. "When I envision typing my last sentence," she says, "it transforms writer's block from frustration to sacred privilege." This isn't macabre, it's alchemical. Like turning base metal into gold, memento mori transmutes obligation into opportunity, duty into devotion. The ultimate test is the calendar countdown. Calculate roughly how many weekends you have left if you live to 80, about 4,000 for a 30-year-old. Buy a jar and fill it with that many marbles. Each Friday, remove one. A finance director who tried this reported a radical shift. Watching those marbles diminish killed my procrastination habit. I finally booked that pottery class, apologized to my sister, and started the novel I'd been saving for retirement. That's death's secret gift. It doesn't steal meaning from life, it concentrates it. Seneca's letters return to this theme like a chorus. You act like mortals in all you fear and immortals in all you desire. Memento mori is the antidote to that delusion. It's not about counting down in dread, but waking up in wonder. Your final breath isn't waiting to ambush you, it's walking beside you, pointing at sunsets and old wounds and quiet moments, whispering, "Notice this." Cherish that, release the rest. The more intimate you become with life's brevity, the more boldly you'll live its depth. Legacy isn't about what you leave behind, it's about what you live toward. Seneca's letters reveal a startling truth. Most people plan their vacations with more care than they design their lives. We obsess over Instagrammable moments but rarely pause to ask, what fingerprints will my existence leave on the world after the last photo fades? This isn't morbid introspection, it's the ultimate creative challenge. Imagine your deathbed not as an ending, but as a lens bringing your present choices into razor focus. A Silicon Valley product manager I coached used this framework to transform her career. Instead of chasing promotions, she began asking, will this feature I'm building still matter when my toddler is my age? That simple shift led her to pioneer an accessibility tool now used by millions with disabilities, a legacy far beyond any quarterly bonus. Start with Seneca's reverse eulogy exercise. Take a blank page and divide it into 3 columns: who I was, what I built, and how I loved. Under each, write not achievements but impacts. Did you leave people feeling heard or hurried? Did your work solve trivial problems or human struggles? A restaurateur used this to pivot from trendy fusion dishes to funding urban food deserts. I realized I wanted my obituary to read "Fed the Hungry, not mastered truffle foam," he told me. Modern goal-setting gurus call this backward design, but Seneca framed it more vividly: live each day as if composing your life's final sentence. Now fuse ancient Stoicism with modern science. Research shows that legacy priming, regularly reflecting on your mortality, boosts prosocial behavior by over 30%. Try this adaptation once a week. Draft a hypothetical letter from your future grandchild thanking you for one specific choice you made this month. A financial advisor started doing this and switched from selling high-fee funds to teaching free investing workshops in underserved schools. Those letters kept haunting me, he admitted. I couldn't face a future where my best skill only helped the already rich. The real magic happens when you bridge legacy with daily rituals. Seneca kept a moral ledger, tracking small acts of integrity as diligently as financial transactions. Your modern version, a legacy jar. Every evening, jot one action aligning with your deathbed vision on a slip of paper. A teacher filled hers with notes like, "Listen to Jaden's bullying story instead of rushing to lunch," and taught quadratic equations using skateboard metaphors. After 6 months, she emptied the jar and wept. These tiny choices were my real curriculum, she realized, but don't confuse legacy with grandeur. Seneca revered the quiet dignity of ordinary lives well lived. The farmer who nurtured generations from his soil, the weaver whose blankets warmed countless families. Today, a barista's legacy might be remembering every regular's order, making lonely souls feel seen. A software engineers could be refusing to optimize apps for addiction. Legacy isn't scale, it's resonance. Here's your challenge: design a legacy filter for decisions. Next time you face a crossroads, take the high-paying job or the meaningful one. Indulge a grudge or extend forgiveness project forward 50 years. Which path leads to a story your future self will tell with pride? A journalist applied this when offered a clickbait gig. He imagined his grandchildren Googling his bylines and chose investigative reporting instead. His Pulitzer came later, but his real victory was the quiet certainty that his work had weight. Seneca's most radical insight: legacy building begins not with doing more, but with seeing more clearly. That argument you're about to win at the cost of a relationship, the corner you're cutting today that might unravel someone's tomorrow, those are the hinges your legacy swings on. Most lives aren't derailed by grand catastrophes, but by 1,000 small surrenders to expedience. The antidote is living each day as if you're being interviewed by the future, because you are. Every choice is a brushstroke in a portrait others will study long after the painter's hands are still. Pain arrives uninvited: a stabbing knee injury on the soccer field, the gut punch of unexpected layoffs, the slow burn of a relationship unraveling. Seneca saw these moments not as enemies to flee, but as messengers delivering urgent memos about the human condition. His revolutionary distinction: pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Modern neuroscience now confirms what the Stoic philosopher intuited. Agony itself is a biological signal, sharp but fleeting, while suffering is the story we wrap around it, the mental loop of why me. And this shouldn't be happening. That prolongs the torment. Consider two patients recovering from identical surgeries. One fixates on the injustice of their pain, demanding stronger meds, while another acknowledges the discomfort as part of healing, focusing instead on small mobility wins. Both feel the same physical sensations, but their mental frameworks dictate who emerges stronger. That's Seneca's razor. Pain becomes suffering when we insist reality should conform to our preferences. A tech entrepreneur applied this when his startup failed. Instead of spiraling into "I'm a fraud," he journaled, "This isn't punishment, it's data. What's the lesson?" Within months, that mindset shift led him to identify a market gap his previous venture had missed. Enter acceptance and commitment therapy act, a modern psychological approach that mirrors Seneca's ancient wisdom. Its core technique, cognitive diffusion, teaches us to observe painful thoughts like passing weather rather than truths carved in stone. Try this now. Think, "I can't handle this," then preface it with, "I'm having the thought that feel the difference." That tiny linguistic space is where Stoic freedom lives. A nurse battling burnout used this to transform her exhaustion. When the thought, "I'm failing my patients," arose, she'd silently add, "My mind is offering a story about failure." The thought lost its chokehold, allowing her to choose actions aligned with her values despite fatigue. Seneca's most practical tool, the Discomfort Diary, bridges ancient philosophy and modern therapy. For 7 days, log physical and emotional pains in 2 columns: sensations, tight chest, throbbing tooth, and stories. "This pain means I'm weak." A graphic designer with chronic back pain discovered through this practice that 80% of her suffering came not from her spine, but from catastrophic predictions like, "I'll end up disabled." By separating raw sensation from mental commentary, she redirected energy toward adaptive exercises instead of anxiety loops. The breakthrough comes when we realize pain often carries encrypted gifts. Studies on post-traumatic growth reveal that individuals who lean into hardship, asking, "What's here to teach me?" develop heightened resilience, deeper relationships, and renewed purpose. A veteran with PTSD reframed his flashbacks as signals to mentor at-risk youth. "The war took enough," he said. "I won't let it steal my capacity to protect others." That's Seneca's Amor Fati in action, not loving the wound, but loving who you become by healing it. Your challenge next time discomfort strikes, whether a stubbed toe or a rejection letter: conduct a 3-part autopsy. First, note the pure physical or emotional sensations without judgment. Second, identify the mental narrative: "This proves I'm not good enough." Finally, ask Seneca's clarifying question: Is this pain legitimate information or just noise my mind invented to avoid uncertainty? The answer will show you where true growth begins, not beyond the pain but within it. Saying no doesn't weaken your position, it fortifies it. Seneca mastered this subtle art in an empire where refusal could mean exile or worse. His letters reveal a man who declined dinner invitations from emperors and toxic friendships with equal poise, not out of arrogance but from a profound understanding. Every yes stolen by obligation is a no to your integrity. Fast forward to today, where Slack pings and family guilt trips bleed our time like open wounds, and you'll see why his philosophy on boundaries feels ripped from a modern self-help book rather than 2,000-year-old scrolls. Picture this: your boss slides another urgent project onto your overloaded desk. The untrained mind races. If I refuse, they'll think I'm lazy. Enter Seneca's discerning refusal. Not a knee-jerk no, but a calibrated response that protects your priorities while honoring your role. Try this script. I want to give this the focus it deserves. Given my current projects A and B, which should I deprioritize to take this on? Suddenly, the choice isn't between compliance and rebellion. It's a strategic negotiation where your limits command respect. A marketing director used this tactic when her CEO demanded a last-minute campaign overhaul. By framing her pushback as concern for quality rather than resistance, she not only protected her team's sanity but earned a seat at the planning table to prevent future crunches. Toxic relationships demand even sharper boundaries. Seneca wrote of pruning friendships that bear no fruit but spread their shadow. Modern translation: that cousin who weaponizes family ties to drain your energy, or the friend who only calls to vent but ghosts your struggles. Stoic refusal here isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. A nurse recovering from burnout scripted this text for a perpetually needy acquaintance. I care about you, but my capacity to listen deeply is limited right now. Let's schedule a call next month when I can truly be present. The result: the emotional vampires faded while her real relationships deepened. But here's where most miss the mark: boundaries aren't walls. They're drawbridges you control. Seneca hosted lavish dinners for cherished friends but ignored societal pressure to entertain rivals. Apply this selectively today. That co-worker who's always just grabbing coffee to gossip, redirect with I'm swamped today, but if you want to brainstorm solutions, my door's open at 3. You're not rejecting connection, you're elevating its quality. The ultimate test of Stoic refusal is the opportunity cost audit. Before any commitment, ask Seneca's twin questions. What will this yes cost my integrity or growth? And what could this no make space for? An artist turned down a lucrative but soulless commission, using the freed-up time to create a piece that later defined her style. A year later, that missed opportunity had attracted clients aligned with her true vision. Practice this today. Choose one obligation that drains you: a pointless meeting, a draining relative's call, and craft a respectful but unshakable refusal. Notice how the world doesn't end. Instead, something miraculous happens. Your remaining yesies gain weight because they're chosen, not extorted. That's the hidden alchemy of boundaries. They transform compliance into conviction and obligation into authentic engagement. Your time isn't just a commodity, it's the clay of your legacy. Stop letting others sculpt it. Virtue wasn't a buzzword for Seneca, it was the backbone of existence. In a world obsessed with wealth, status, and curated personas, he declared one radical truth: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance aren't just nice qualities. They're the only real goods we can own. Not followers, not promotions, not even health, because while illness might weaken the body, only vice can corrupt the soul. Fast forward to today's endless scroll of performative activism and hollow hashtags, and you'll see why this lesson cuts deeper than ever. Instagram virtue signals flare up and fade like fireworks, while Stoic virtue burns slow and steady like a forge. Let's dissect Seneca's 4 pillars, starting with wisdom, not just knowledge, but the discernment to use it wisely. Picture 2 investors. One memorizes every market trend but panics at the first dip, while the other stays steady, recognizing volatility as part of the process. That's wisdom in action, an anchor in chaos. Courage isn't reckless bravado. It's the quiet resolve to stand by your principles when the crowd roars otherwise. Think of the whistleblower risking career ruin to expose corruption, or the teenager defending an outcast despite social suicide. Justice in Stoicism isn't courtroom drama, it's the daily choice to treat the barrister and the CEO with equal dignity. And temperance, that's the art of enjoying life's pleasures without becoming their servant, whether it's scrolling, shopping, or second helpings. Now contrast this with modern virtue signaling, the hollow performance of morality without the substance. A brand slaps a rainbow flag on products during Pride Month while underpaying LGBTQ employees. An influencer preaches sustainability between private jet posts. Seneca would have called this what it is: spiritual counterfeiting. The giveaway virtue signaling demands an audience. Real virtue thrives in the dark. A nurse who anonymously pays a patient's bill embodies more stoic justice than any viral hashtag campaign. Here's how to conduct a virtue audit. Grab a notebook and draw 4 columns, 1 for each cardinal virtue. Under each, list 3 recent actions, 1 that aligned with the virtue, 1 that missed the mark, and 1 opportunity you ignored. A lawyer auditing his courage column realized he'd championed a tough case aligned, stayed silent when a partner made a racist joke missed, and skipped a pro bono clinic out of laziness ignored. The goal isn't self-flagellation, it's recalibration. Wisdom's odd, it might reveal you spent hours researching a TV purchase but skimped on learning your kid's math curriculum. Temperance could expose that harmless daily wine habit quietly stealing your mornings. Justice, perhaps you tipped generously at the fancy restaurant but brushed off the homeless vet outside. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. The worksheet's power lies in its specificity. General vows like "be better" dissolve like sugar in water. But writing, next Tuesday, I'll mentor the new intern instead of rushing past her desk, forges neural pathways for actual change. The ultimate test, the anonymous challenge. For 1 week, perform 1 act of each virtue with 0 chance of recognition, no social media, no humble brags. Tutor a struggling student without listing it on your resume. Return the overpaid cash when no one's watching. Eat the salad when you crave fries, knowing no one will applaud. That's virtue uncut by vanity. When Seneca said these qualities were life's only true goods, he meant they're the only possessions no empire can confiscate, no recession can devalue. Instagram influencers lose their shine when trends shift. Stoic virtue, it appreciates with time, becoming the kind of wealth that outlasts marble statues and gilded tombs. Travel brochures promise paradise, but your baggage always flies with you, no extra fee. Seneca saw this truth 2 millennia before Instagram influencers hawked Bali as the cure for existential dread. He wrote of Romans who fled to Greece seeking peace, only to find their same restless minds now pacing under different olive trees. Modern psychology confirms this with brutal clarity. The geographical cure fails nearly 80% of the time. That job you hate won't magically improve because you're doing it near a beach. The relationship anxieties tagging along on your Italian getaway aren't charmed away by gelato and gondolas. Escapism is the ultimate bait and switch. We mistake movement for progress, new backdrops for new selves. Consider a study tracking digital nomads who traded cubicles for coworking spaces in Chiang Mai. Initially, 94% reported soaring happiness, yet within 18 months, 68% had returned to their baseline mood, sometimes lower. Why? They'd outsourced happiness to external stimuli, mistaking novel dopamine hits for lasting change. One participant's journal entry captures it perfectly. I'm still me here, just me with better Wi-Fi and cheaper massages. That's the illusion Seneca shatters. No horizon is wide enough to outrun unresolved inner turmoil. A therapist in Barcelona specializes in expats who crash into this reality. They come saying, "This city will fix me," she notes. Then they're shocked to discover their depression unpacked its suitcase right beside them. But here's where Stoicism pivots from bleak to liberating. Seneca doesn't condemn travel, he condemns using it as anesthesia. His letters describe voyages to Sicily and Egypt not as escapes but as mirrors. "Every shore shows me another angle of my own mind," he wrote. This reframes travel from running from to meeting with. Imagine two travelers in Paris. One frantically Instagrams every croissant, subconsciously shouting, "See, I'm happy." The other sits in a quiet cafe journaling. What does my irritation at slow service reveal about my need for control? The destination is identical, the lens transforms it. The practice is simpler than you'd think. Before any trip, whether a weekend road trip or a year abroad, conduct a motive audit. Ask, am I going to experience or to evade? If it's the latter, add a daily ritual that turns the journey inward. A corporate burnout turned this around during her sabbatical in Portugal. Instead of bouncing between hotspots, she instituted Stoic sunsets, 30 minutes each evening, dissecting one unresolved work conflict or childhood wound. By trip's end, the ocean views were lovely, but the real revelation was discovering how much peace she'd left untapped in her own backyard. For those not boarding planes, the principle applies locally. The grass is greener syndrome isn't cured by changing lawns, it's cured by weeding your own. Try Seneca's Contentment Challenge for 30 days. Act as if your current city, job, or relationship is your final destination. Not with resignation, but with the curiosity of an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. A teacher trapped in Midwest winters began documenting subtle seasonal beauty. The way frost etched fractal patterns on his windshield, how neighbors rallied during snowstorms. His journal morphed from complaints to poetry, proving Seneca's point. Depth of presence outshines breadth of passport stamps, the ultimate test, the unplugged pilgrimage. Go somewhere mundane, a local park, a library with no distractions, no photos, no playlists, no agenda. Just you, your thoughts, and the practice of asking, what if this is enough? A tech CEO does this quarterly at a motel 6-20 minutes from his office. It's not the where, he says, it's the why. Those four walls reflect back whatever chaos or calm I bring in. That's the Stoic secret. Real transformation isn't about finding the right place. It's about bringing the right mind to any place. Your paradise pass isn't a boarding ticket. It's the courage to sit with yourself wherever you are and declare, this is where the work begins. The chaos of a crowded subway, the glare of screens in a waiting room, the relentless ping of notifications, these aren't just distractions. They're invasions. Seneca's answer: build an inner citadel, a mental fortress no external storm can breach. Think of it as portable peace, a sanctuary you carry within. The Stoics didn't wait for quiet to find them. They engineered tranquility from the inside out, brick by brick, even as emperors plotted against them. Start with the breath, not as cliché but as architecture. Ancient Stoics practiced rhythmic breathing to anchor themselves during political upheavals. Modern science calls this interoception, tuning into bodily signals to regulate emotions. Try this on your next stressful commute. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. The extended exhale triggers the vagus nerve, flipping your nervous system from fight or flight to rest and digest. A trial lawyer I coached uses this before cross-examinations. It's not about eliminating nerves, she says. It's about choosing which voice gets the microphone, panic or focus. But Stoic mindfulness goes deeper than breath. Seneca's letters describe visualizing a sacred inner space, a garden, a library, a mountaintop where the soul retreats to deliberate. A firefighter battling California wildfires adapted this by crafting his mental bunker. Between rescues, he'd close his eyes and mentally walk through his grandfather's workshop, smelling sawdust, touching tools. Those 60-second respites lowered his cortisol levels more than twice the break time would suggest. Neuroscience confirms this. Imagined safe spaces activate the same calming brain regions as physical ones. Your turn. Design your citadel with sensory precision. Is the floor cool stone or warm wood? Are there windows? What books line the shelves? A CEO who meditated daily still felt scattered until he added tactile details, imagining a smooth obsidian worry stone in his pocket during meetings. The stone isn't real, he laughed, but the calm is. This isn't escapism, it's strategic sovereignty, like a submarine surfacing to recharge before diving back into depths. The real test comes when chaos strikes. Next time you're trapped in a tense family dinner or a delayed flight, don't just tolerate the discomfort, mine it. Seneca turned exile into a writing retreat, prison into a thinking cell. A single mother I know reframed her toddler's tantrums as resilience drills. Instead of drowning in frustration, she'd whisper Seneca's mantra, "This is the material fate has given me to sculpt with." Within weeks, meltdowns became less triggers and more training grounds. Anchor phrases sharpen this practice. Choose a line to reel you back when storms hit. Perhaps Seneca's, "The mind shapes its own world," or your own, like, "I own this breath." A surgeon repeats, "Steady hands before incisions." A teacher murmurs, "This too is material." When classrooms erupt, these aren't affirmations, they're cognitive grappling hooks. End your day with a citadel audit. Review moments you fled to distraction instead of fortitude. Did you scroll when stressed, vent instead of breathe? No judgment, just notes for tomorrow's blueprint. Like Seneca reviewing his nightly scrolls, you're not building a perfect sanctuary. You're laying bricks where they're needed most. The goal isn't to eliminate chaos, it's to carry quiet within it. A monk doesn't silence the world. He learns to hear himself beneath it. Your inner citadel isn't a retreat from life. It's the command center from which you engage it, unshaken. Laughter in the face of suffering isn't just defiance, it's alchemy. Seneca, often painted as the Summer Sage, filled his letters with razor-sharp wit, joking about political corruption like a stand-up philosopher. When exiled to Corsica, he didn't pen dreary laments, he wrote satire comparing the island's rugged terrain to Rome's gilded excess, noting, "At least here the rocks don't lie." This wasn't escapism, it was Stoic weaponry. Viktor Frankl later mirrored this in Nazi concentration camps, observing that prisoners who shared dark jokes about their captors often outlasted those who surrendered to despair. Both men understood humor doesn't trivialize pain, it triangulates it, giving you a vantage point to see struggle as something you observe, not just endure. Consider a modern parallel. Nurses in ICU wards during the pandemic's peak, cracking gallows humor about overflowing PPE bins. Were they insensitive? Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Their laughter was psychological armor. A Johns Hopkins study found medical teams who used morbid comedy scored 30% lower on trauma scales. Like Seneca mocking Nero's vanity, their jokes weren't denial but dominion, a way to shrink monstrous circumstances down to human scale. Here's how to wield this tool. First, name the absurdity explicitly. A startup founder facing yet another funding rejection started labeling each no with increasingly ridiculous titles. The VC who mistook my metrics for astrology. The investor who wanted Uber for left-handed gardeners. By framing rejections as satirical vignettes, he diffused their sting while spotting genuine flaws. His pitch, second, practice tragic stand-up, not at others' expense but at life's contradictions. A single mom juggling bills and toddlers scripted imaginary Netflix specials. They say sleep when the baby sleeps, cool, so never. This ritual transformed exhaustion into creative fuel. Even Marcus Aurelius, history's most serious emperor, journaled about senators strutting like peacocks, a reminder that pomposity is comedy in slow motion. The key is distinguishing between laughing at suffering, which diminishes it, and laughing with the part of you that persists despite it, which strengthens you. A cancer survivor described chemo sessions as reverse spa days. They charge you to make you bald. Her humor wasn't about the disease, it celebrated her unbroken spirit. That's the Stoic pivot. When life hands you tragedy, write punchlines that crown you the victor, not the victim. Tonight, try Seneca's absurdity ledger. List 3 current frustrations, then reframe each as a satirical headline. Stuck in traffic, local man discovers infinite parking lot simulation. Coworker stole credit, office Jed, I master's mind trick. These aren't the ideas you're looking for. You'll uncover truth in the laughter. Not every battle needs solemnity. Some just need a well-timed eye roll, and the quiet confidence of someone who knows the universe is more sitcom than Shakespearean tragedy. Society bombards us with desires disguised as needs. The latest phone upgrade, the must-have designer label, the endless scroll of lifestyles we're told to crave. Seneca sliced through this chaos with a blade-sharp distinction. Natural desires arise from the body's true needs, while vain desires are injected into us by external forces. Hunger natural, craving gourmet truffle pasta at midnight. Vain, shelter natural, obsessing over a penthouse to impress strangers. Vain. This isn't about deprivation, it's about sovereignty. Seneca didn't preach austerity, he practiced discernment, indulging in fine wine and art without becoming their slave. The difference between a Stoic and an ascetic. One enjoys the world without needing it to feel whole. Modern neuroscience confirms Seneca's insight. Dopamine, the wanting chemical, doesn't distinguish between survival needs and manufactured cravings. Social media exploits this ruthlessly, hijacking our reward circuitry until we confuse. I saw an ad for this with "I genuinely need this." A Wall Street trader I coached discovered this when he tracked his impulse purchases for a month. 87% were triggered by algorithmic suggestions. He'd never sought out luxury watches, limited edition sneakers, all chasing a satisfaction that evaporated upon delivery. That's the trap of vain desires. They're thirsts that no amount of drinking can quench. Here's how to conduct Seneca's 30-day desire audit. Start with a simple T-chart labeled natural and vain. Each time a craving arises, whether for a new car or a third coffee, interrogate it with 3 questions. Does this serve my survival or growth? Would I still want this if no one knew I had it? Is this desire mine, or was it sold to me? A fashion blogger applied this and uncovered a startling pattern. Her love of design was actually a fear of being photographed in repeats. By day 20, she'd replaced 70% of her shopping budget with tailoring existing clothes, rediscovering joy in creativity over consumption. The magic lies in substitution, not suppression. When you identify a vain desire, don't just white-knuckle resist it. Redirect that energy toward its natural counterpart. Craving retail therapy, visit the library instead. The thrill of acquisition channeled into knowledge. Hooked on tranquilizers, swap them for trail runs. Both soothe anxiety, but one builds resilience. A former binge watcher turned his Netflix compulsion into a Stoic film club, analyzing classic movies for philosophical themes. The craving for immersion remained, its vessel transformed. Desire mapping reveals hidden hierarchies of value. A corporate lawyer expecting to find more money atop his list was shocked when his journal exposed a deeper pattern. Every vain desire traced back to a childhood fear of scarcity. His real craving wasn't wealth, it was security. This clarity led him to downsize his apartment and invest in trauma therapy, a trade that paid dividends no bonus ever could. Seneca's framework doesn't judge your desires, it interrogates their origin stories. By day 30, you'll notice a seismic shift. Cravings lose their gravitational pull when exposed as imposters. That latte habit, it might dissolve into savoring one perfect cup weekly. the gym obsession fueled by Instagram comparisons. It could evolve into joyful movement that needs no tracking app. This isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. Seneca's genius was recognizing that temperance isn't the enemy of pleasure, it's the curator of it. When you stop drowning in shallow wants, you create space to dive deep into what truly nourishes. The disciplined life isn't smaller, it's infinitely richer because every desire left standing has earned its place. Time bends to our perception. What feels like mere minutes scrolling through reels can steal hours from our lives, while an hour immersed in meaningful work can feel like a fleeting moment. Seneca called this paradox the shortness of life. Not because days are brief, but because we surrender them to distractions that leave no footprint on our souls. Modern tools have only amplified the theft. Your screen time report might say you spent 3 hours on apps last Tuesday, but can you recall even 3 meaningful moments from that digital haze? That's the illusion. We confuse motion with living, mistaking the endless churn of content for a life well spent. Start by conducting a time autopsy. For 1 week, track every activity in 2 columns: stolen time, mindless scrolling, gossip, complaining, and sown time, learning, creating, connecting deeply. Use apps like Rescue Time or even a simple notebook. A marketing executive did this and discovered he'd spent 11 hours in 2 weeks debating strangers in comment sections, time that could have written a novella or mastered basic Italian. The shock wasn't the hours lost, but realizing he couldn't articulate why those arguments had mattered. Seneca's razor cuts clean. Life is long if you know how to use it. Reclamation begins with substitution, not elimination. Our brains crave stimulation. The dopamine hits from likes and notifications aren't evil, just misdirected. For every stolen time habit, engineer a sown time alternative. Swap Instagram scrolling for a curated museum app like Daily Art. Replace complaint-filled coffee breaks with solution sprints where you brainstorm fixes for one work problem. A college student transformed her TikTok addiction by keeping a sketchpad beside her phone now. Every urge to scroll becomes 3 minutes of drawing. Within months, her stolen time birthed an art Instagram that outgrew her personal account. Design your days with intention anchors, rituals that ground you in real time. Seneca started mornings by asking, "What will make today worthy of memory?" Try his sunset reflection. Spend 5 minutes reviewing when you were most and least present. A programmer added this practice and noticed a pattern. His deepest focus came after playing piano for 10 minutes. Now his keyboard sits between his desk and his PlayStation, a physical reminder that leisure can sharpen rather than scatter attention. The digital age's greatest trick is making busyness feel productive. We juggle tabs and notifications like circus performers, yet at day's end, the ledger shows more fatigue than fulfillment. Seneca's antidote: measure your life by depth, not speed. A journalist experimented with printing his weekly calendar in bold blocks, red for reactive tasks, black for intentional ones. By week 3, he'd reshaped his schedule to eliminate 80% of red, creating space for writing his novel during morning energy peaks. That's time reclamation in action, treating hours like finite currency and spending them where they appreciate. Your challenge starts tonight. Before bed, list 3 moments today that felt fully alive, not necessarily joyful, but real. Then identify 3 that slipped through your fingers like smoke. Tomorrow, engineer 1 substitution. Turn a commute podcast into a language lesson. Convert a gossip session into a brainstorming chat. Time's shortness isn't the enemy, it's the urgency that makes each reclaimed second glow brighter. The clock doesn't discriminate, it ticks the same for everyone. The difference lies in who's listening. Adversity doesn't hide genius, it reveals it, like fire separating impurities from gold. Seneca's metaphor cuts deeper than poetic flourish. It's a blueprint for transformation. Consider gold ore, dull, unremarkable until subjected to blistering heat. The flames don't create its brilliance, they expose what was always there. Human potential works the same way. Malala Yousafzai's courage didn't emerge because of a Taliban bullet, it crystallized under its heat. Before the attack, she was one voice among many advocating for education. Afterward, her unbroken resolve became a beacon visible to the world. That's the paradox of trials. They don't shape character so much as strip away everything that isn't essential. Mandela's 27 years in prison could have been a tomb for his spirit. Instead, Robben Island became a crucible. The man who entered in 1964 was an angry revolutionary. The one who emerged in 1990 was a statesman capable of dismantling apartheid without civil war. The isolation, the forced labor, the broken limestone that damaged his eyesight, these weren't obstacles to his greatness but the anvil against which it was forged. Modern psychology confirms this phenomenon. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that 15 to 75% of trauma survivors report positive psychological changes, from heightened resilience to renewed purpose. The fire doesn't just test, it transmutes, but here's where Seneca's wisdom transcends inspiration manuals. His metaphor implies agency. Gold doesn't choose the flame, but we can choose how we meet adversity. Take Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz and wrote Man's Search for Meaning. In the camps, he noticed two types of prisoners: those who crumbled under brutality and those who found scraps of meaning sharing bread, comforting the sick, even dark humor. Their circumstances were identical, their responses weren't. Frankl's insight mirrors Seneca's: suffering is inevitable, but victimhood is optional. This reframe turns life's harshest moments into diagnostic tools. That demotion at work, it might reveal whether your self-worth was tied to a title. The betrayal that guts you, it exposes where you placed unwarranted trust. A musician I coached discovered this after losing partial hearing. At first, he raged against unfairness. Then he asked Seneca's question, "What if this is the fire showing me a different kind of music?" He switched to composing for vibrations, creating pieces felt through the floor, a niche that made him a pioneer in accessibility arts. Practical application starts with the adversity ledger. Divide a page into 3 columns: event, what it revealed, and how I responded. A startup founder used this after her company collapsed. Her ledger entry read, "Failure exposed my dependence on external validation. Right arrow realized I'd been building to impress investors, not serve users." Right arrow pivoted to a bootstrap model focused on real pain points. Within a year, her revenue surpassed her venture-funded days. The fire didn't destroy her dream, it burned away the distractions clouding it. Your turn. Identify one current struggle and interrogate it like a Stoic metallurgist. Is this flame melting you or refining you? The answer lies not in the heat's intensity, but in the purity of what you choose to bring to it. Greatness isn't the absence of adversity, it's the presence of something unburnable within you. Bookshelves groaning with unread self-help tomes are the modern equivalent of Seneca's silver plates untouched by teeth, decorative but nourishing no one. The Roman philosopher reserved special scorn for wealthy patrons who amassed Greek scrolls as status symbols while their minds remained unchallenged. Fast forward to today's tsundoku culture, the Japanese term for acquiring books that pile up unread, and you'll see why his critique stings. We mistake the weight of our libraries for wisdom, confusing possession with progress. But Stoic reading isn't about quantity, it's about alchemy, transforming ink on a page into blood in your veins. Seneca's antidote to superficial reading. Deep digestion. He compared books to food. You wouldn't gorge on 20 meals at once, so why cram your mind with fragmented ideas? A tech CEO I coached embodied this shift when he replaced his 200-book productivity wishlist with 5 core texts read cyclically. Using Seneca's annotation method, he color-coded margins, red for contradictions to his assumptions, blue for actionable insights, green for passages requiring rereading during crises. Within months, those dog-eared pages had reshaped his leadership more than years of skimming bestsellers. Your Stoic starter kit begins with 5 essential texts, each serving a distinct purpose like tools in a mental dojo. First, Epictetus discourses the sparring partner that trains your response to adversity. Read it with a notebook tracking what's mine to control in daily conflicts. Second, Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, ideally in a small edition carried everywhere. Its fragmented structure invites you to flip randomly when dilemmas strike, treating it less like scripture and more like a wisdom compass. Third, Seneca's Letters from a Stoic, where you'll apply his 3-question method per letter. What virtue does this highlight? What? Where did I neglect this yesterday? How will I practice it tomorrow? For contemporary application, add Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way as your training manual, annotating each historical example with parallel modern challenges. How would Stoic principles apply to a social media scandal or a startup pivot? Finally, a handbook for new Stoics by Pigliucci and Lopez offers 52 weekly exercises. Treat it like a gym membership for your character, completing 1 drill before allowing yourself new reading material. The magic lies in interactive engagement. Try the marginal dialogue technique. Argue with the text in real time. When Marcus writes, the impediment becomes the way. Counter with your toughest current obstacle in the margins. Does it hold up? A nurse battling burnout scribbled notes like, "Easy for an emperor to say, try saying this during a triple shift." Over time, her annotations revealed patterns where Stoic principles clashed with systemic healthcare flaws, guiding her advocacy work. Seneca warned against becoming a slave to the library, knowledge hoarded but never applied. Measure reading success not by pages turned but by behaviors changed. That CEO, he now reviews his marked-up Epictetus quarterly, tracking how his red contradictions, once resistance to feedback, have dwindled as blue actions, structured reflection sessions with his team multiplied. Books become mentors when we stop collecting them and start conversing with them. Your homework: pull 1 heavily highlighted book from your shelf. Rewrite 3 key passages in your own words, then design 1 small experiment to test each this week. The gap between reading and living closes only when we treat words not as decorations but as deliberate challenges to our comfort. There's a cruel irony in how we treat time. We romanticize the past, obsess over the future, and abandon the only moment we ever truly own: today. Seneca called this paradox the thief of presence. Watching his peers waste years planning elaborate tomorrows that never arrived while their neglected todays slipped through their fingers like sand. Modern psychology confirms this with brutal clarity. Studies show nearly 50% of our waking hours are spent mentally time traveling, either reliving what's gone or rehearsing what might be. That's the tragedy. We're ghosts in our own lives, haunting moments we're too distracted to inhabit. But here's where Stoicism collides with mindfulness to form an unshakable anchor. Seneca didn't just preach presence, he engineered it through what I call the daily recommitment ritual. Picture a Roman general standing at dawn before his troops, renewing their oath to the empire. That's you each morning, pledging allegiance not to an external power, but to your own sovereignty over the next 24 hours. The ritual starts with a 3-part invocation. First, the hymn to now. Before checking your phone, stand at a window or step outside and declare aloud, "This light, this breath, this heartbeat, these are the raw materials of my empire." A surgeon I coached does this while brewing coffee, letting the aroma ground him in his senses. When I'm elbow deep in someone's chest later, he says, I can recall that first whiff of dark roast to snap back into focus. Second, the debt audit. Seneca urged examining what you owe the present not morally but energetically. Open your calendar and label each commitment as either a debt, past obligations resurfacing, or a seed, future potential being planted. A startup founder uses colored dots, red for reactive tasks, green for generative ones. Over time, this visual map trains your brain to spot when you're living in yesterday's leftovers instead of today's fresh harvest. Finally, the procrastination funeral. Here's the twist: you're not mourning delayed tasks, you're burying the fantasy that tomorrow's version of you will be magically more motivated. Write down one thing you've postponed, then light a match or tap a candle app as you say, "I release the myth of future me." A writer battling deadlines turned this into performance art. She'd literally shred her "I'll do it tomorrow" notes into a bowl labeled "The Grave of Good Intentions." Within weeks, her productivity spiked not from discipline, but from the visceral understanding that today's avoidance is tomorrow's regret. This ritual works because it exploits a neurological hack, the ceremony effect. Studies on habit formation show that ritualized actions create heightened states of focus by triggering the brain's salience network. In simpler terms, lighting that candle or speaking aloud shifts today from abstract concept to sacred space. A teacher in Chicago starts classes with a modified version. Students whisper one thing they're fully showing up for that period. The room changes, she says. You can feel the collective click into presence. Procrastination isn't laziness, it's a failure of imagination. We can't viscerally feel the future consequences of skipping today's workout or delaying that difficult conversation. Seneca's workaround: assign your present self the role of historian from the future. At random moments, pause and journal a single sentence in past tense. Today, I chose to, and it made all the difference. A fitness coach uses this with clients. They text her completed workouts as if reporting from next month. Wrote this on June 3rd. So glad I did burpees instead of hitting snooze. Energy carried me through my pitch. By framing actions as already accomplished history, the abstract future becomes tactile. The ultimate test is the Seneca sunset. Each evening, review the day not through the lens of productivity but of presence. Ask, when was I most alive today? When did I disappear into mental time travel? A CEO who adopted this noticed a pattern. His deepest focus came during walks where he banned headphones, letting ambient sounds tether him to the now. Now he schedules barefoot meetings, walking talks where the sensation of grass or pavement beneath his feet keeps conversations grounded in what's real. Here's the secret these practices reveal. Today isn't a stepping stone to some grand future. It's the final product. The career, the relationships, the legacy, they're all just collections of today's stacked like bricks. Procrastination isn't stealing from tomorrow, it's robbing the present of its rightful weight. Your happiest future self won't thank you for the plans you made. They'll treasure the days you fully showed up, when the light through the window and the coffee in your cup were enough to make the universe feel complete. Imagine walking through the Roman Forum 2,000 years ago, where politicians shuffled between marble columns, adjusting their togas and rehearsing speeches, not for truth but for applause. Seneca watched this theater with a philosopher's piercing gaze, recognizing a timeless human trap, the confusion between reputation and self. His letters return to this theme like a warning bell. How many are you when the crowd leaves? That question slices through today's digital marketplace of likes and viral moments. Your Instagram following, your professional title, even that carefully crafted "about me" bio, these are masks. They may be artfully designed, but they aren't your face. The Stoic distinction here is radical yet simple. Reputation is external weather, while character is internal architecture. Consider Cato the Younger, Seneca's role model, who walked through Rome's streets dressed in outdated tunics, mocking fashion trends. When rivals spread rumors he was drunk, he laughed. They've mistaken my indifference for intoxication. Cato wasn't careless about virtue, he was fanatical about it, but public opinion that he treated like background noise. Fast forward to today's cancel culture and virtue signaling. How many of us could withstand a smear campaign with Cato's unshaken calm? How often do we let retweets or office gossip define our worth? Try this detachment from likes exercise. Tonight, list 3 things that currently boost your ego: a glowing performance review, a viral post, and 3 that dented a critical comment, being left off a guest list. Now imagine holding each up to Seneca's 3-question filter. Was this within my control? Does this reflect my effort or others' perceptions? Would a wise person stake their happiness on this? A tech CEO I coached did this and discovered a disturbing pattern. He'd based 80% of his self-worth on press coverage. His breakthrough came when he realized the Wall Street Journal doesn't know if I'm a good father. Public perception operates like a funhouse mirror. It reflects, but it also distorts. Seneca's letters describe politicians who twisted themselves into human pretzels to please fickle crowds, only to wake up one day unrecognizable to themselves. The modern equivalent, that friend who curates Instagram stories to mirror whatever's trending, or the employee who mimics the boss's laugh. Psychologists call this self-monitoring, and while it's socially adaptive in small doses, it becomes soul erosion when we can't distinguish the performance from the performer. Here's where Stoicism offers an antidote more potent than any self-help platitude. Your reputation is a story others tell. Your character is the story you live. One changes with the wind, the other is built stone by stone through choices no one may ever see. A nurse battling hospital politics applied this by keeping a secret integrity journal. Each night, she recorded one act of compassion no one witnessed, holding a dying patient's hand an extra minute, teaching a new colleague a shortcut. Over time, those private entries became her anchor when accolades or criticisms rolled off her back. The ultimate test, the mask removal visualization. Picture yourself at your own funeral, not the sanitized eulogy version, but the raw truth. What would your closest confidants whisper about who you really were when the curtains closed? A restaurateur did this exercise and realized his Michelin stars meant less than the fact his line cooks trusted him with their struggles. That's the pivot point when prestige stops being armor and starts being decoration. Start small today. Decline one opportunity for external validation. Don't post that humble brag. Don't name drop in conversation. Notice the momentary discomfort, then the quiet liberation. Like Cotto's threadbare cloak, your unmasked self might seem odd to the world at first, but it's the only version that won't fray when the spotlight fades. Imagine standing on a tightrope between 2 skyscrapers, one side labeled hope, the other fear. Most people teeter wildly between the two, either clinging to fragile optimism or bracing for inevitable disaster. Seneca's equanimity equation offers a third option, becoming the calm at the center of the storm. His philosophy doesn't erase emotions, it transforms them into strategic tools, like a seasoned investor balancing high-growth stocks with stable bonds. Take the stock market as a living metaphor. Novice traders fall into 2 traps. They either fixate on peak gains, hope, or obsess over catastrophic losses, fear. The master investor, they diversify. A portion of their portfolio chases growth, another anchors instability. Seneca applies this same hedging strategy to emotions. Hope becomes your growth stock, the vision pulling you forward. Fear transforms into your bond, the realistic constraints keeping you grounded. A tech founder embodied this during a startup's make or break pitch. Instead of drowning in what if we get funded, hope, or what if we fail, fear, she practiced Seneca's dual visualization. First, she scripted the investor's rejection, not to despair but to map her pivot plan, consulting gigs to sustain the team. Then she imagined securing the round, not to daydream, but to outline her first 90 days of execution. This mental diversification left her neither overconfident nor paralyzed. When the maybe next quarter email arrived, she implemented Plan B with the same focus she'd reserved for Plan A. The equanimity equation shines brightest in long-term pursuits. Consider an author writing a novel. Pure hope whispers, "This will be a bestseller," setting up crushing disappointment. Raw fear mutters, "No one will read this," suffocating creativity. The Stoic middle path. I will write this book as if millions will read it and edit it as if no one will. That tension between aspiration and detachment is where greatness lies. Modern psychology validates this ancient balance. Studies on defensive pessimism show that anticipating obstacles, not to worry but to prepare, boosts performance by up to 30%. Meanwhile, strategic optimism fuels persistence. Merging these creates emotional compound interest, the gains of ambition without the volatility of blind faith. Try Seneca's trading floor exercise today. Draw 2 columns, hope positions, dreams you're emotionally overinvested in, and fear shorts, catastrophes you're over-hedging against. Now rebalance. For every hope, identify one practical step forward and one acceptable alternative outcome. For each fear, outline both its real probability and your contingency plan. A musician used this to navigate his first tour, hoping for sold-out shows but prepared to break even, fearing technical disasters but packing backup gear. The result, he performed with fiery presence, knowing no single night could bankrupt his spirit. This isn't about diluting passion, it's about distilling resilience. Hope without fear is delusion, fear without hope is despair, but the middle path, that's where you discover the rarest currency of all, the unshakable calm of knowing you're prepared for either outcome, so you're free to give your all to this moment. Seneca's Rome had chariot races. We have the stock ticker. The arenas change, but the wisdom holds true stability comes not from predicting the race, but from mastering your grip on the reins. Criticism lands like a punch to the gut. Your heart races, your face flushes, and suddenly every defensive instinct flares. But what if I told you your most vicious detractors are secretly your greatest teachers, offering lessons no friend would dare deliver? Seneca called adversaries involuntary mentors, forces that sand down our rough edges precisely because they refuse to handle us with care. Think of Michelangelo's David. Those relentless chisel strikes didn't destroy the marble, they revealed the masterpiece within. Consider the anatomy of an insult. When a rival sneers that your presentation was amateurish, your first reaction might be fury or shame. But pause that impulse and dissect the comment like a scientist. Is there a kernel of useful data buried in the emotional delivery? Maybe your slides were text-heavy or your delivery lacked conviction. A chef I know transformed his career by applying Seneca's 3-layer filter to scathing Yelp reviews. First, he'd strip away the venom. This pasta tastes like dog food becomes flavor imbalance noted. Next, he'd ask, would I respect the person giving this feedback if they said it kindly? Finally, he'd test the critique, adjusting seasoning ratios for a week. His once negative reviewer later became a regular who bragged about helping invent the house special. Feedback alchemy requires separating the message from the messenger. A tech CEO facing brutal investor pushback used what I call the Feynman translation. He'd rewrite each critique in the calm, analytical tone of physicist Richard Feynman. Your business model is delusional became, current projections may underestimate market friction. Suddenly, personal attacks morphed into solvable equations. This mirrors Seneca's practice of imagining critics as physicians delivering bitter medicine. We don't blame the doctor for the cure's taste. But here's where most self-help advice fails. Stoicism doesn't demand we swallow every insult as truth. Some criticism is radioactive waste, useless and toxic. The key lies in Seneca's ownership quadrant. Draw 2 axes, one for truth, valid to baseless, another for intent, constructive to malicious. A comment lands in one of 4 squares. Brutal honesty from a trusted colleague, upper right, absorb fully. A troll's grammatically challenged rant, lower left, dismiss without internalizing. That vague, your overrated jab from an industry rival, possibly lower right, scan for hidden truths, then discard the packaging. Practical application, keep a shadow mentor journal. Each week, select one piece of harsh feedback and perform a stress test. If your critic's words were true, what would need to change? A novelist stung by a review accusing her characters of being wooden realized her dialogue improved dramatically when she stopped protecting her darlings. Meanwhile, a fitness influencer initially crushed by body-shaming comments discovered his real issue wasn't his physique, it was his over-reliance on appearance-focused content. Both transformed attacks into upgrades without surrendering self-worth. The final alchemical step: thank your mentors, yes, even the involuntary ones. Not with performative humility, but with silent acknowledgement of their role in your evolution. Every diamond was once carbon under pressure. Every wise leader carries scars from battles they initially resented. When Seneca faced exile, he didn't just endure it, he mined it for insights that outlasted the empire that banished him. Your critics aren't interruptions to your growth, they're an essential part of the curriculum. The question isn't whether they'll show up, it's whether you'll enroll in their unwitting classroom. Your smartphone pings with another notification, someone's at a party you weren't invited to. Your chest tightens, that's FOMO venom working its way into your bloodstream. Meanwhile, your coworker collapses onto the break room couch, eyes glazed from back-to-back Zoom marathons. Burnout's fever has set in. These aren't just bad moods, they're modern plagues of the soul. And just as you wouldn't treat an infection with wishful thinking, emotional ailments demand more than vague affirmations. Seneca saw philosophy as medicine, not some abstract theory, but a literal pharmacy for the psyche, stocked with precise remedies for daily afflictions. The catch: you can't just glance at the label, you've got to swallow the pill. Start with FOMO, the gnawing dread that everyone else is living better, brighter lives. Stoicism's prescription: a 3-minute comparison detox. First, scan your surroundings: the chair supporting you, the light through the window, the rhythm of your breath. These are your anchor realities. Now open Seneca's letters to Book 7. What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears. Read it aloud, not as poetry, but as a clinical fact. No human escapes missing out. Finish by scripting your own counter-narrative. While there at that party, I'm gaining rest, creativity, solitude's gifts. A digital marketer used this daily and found her envy shrinking, not because her life changed, but because she stopped seeing absence as deprivation. Burnout requires stronger medicine. Here's the restoration triage. Set a timer for 180 seconds. First minute: diagnose. Whisper Marcus Aurelius's blunt truth. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Next minute: dissect. Name one task that could be deleted, delegated, or downsized without catastrophe. Final minute: prescribe. Choose one Seneca-approved recovery act. A walk without headphones, 5 minutes staring at clouds, or his favorite, a cold water face plunge. An ER nurse adopted this between shifts, replacing frantic coffee runs with these micro-interventions. It's not about having more energy, she realized. It's about remembering I'm human, not a machine that forgot to shut off. But the most potent remedies target deeper chronic conditions. For the anxiety of uncertainty, compound 2 Stoic ingredients: Epictetus' dichotomy of control, 1 minute listing what's mine versus what's not. With Seneca's premeditation, exercise 2 minutes vividly imagining your worst-case scenario, then scripting your survival steps. A startup founder facing bankruptcy did this daily, not to escape fear but to inoculate against it. When collapse came, he pivoted to consulting with eerie calm because he'd already lived through the disaster on paper. The genius of this pharmacy: no refills needed. The medicines are evergreen, their potency increasing with use. That text from the party: it's not a wound, it's a reminder to take your next dose. The exhaustion after another endless day: not a sentence but a signal to administer the antidote. Seneca didn't just write about philosophy, he dispensed it like a physician, one precise treatment at a time. Your soul's health isn't a given, it's a daily practice, measured not in grand epiphanies but in 3-minute increments of deliberate repair, the scalpels in your hand. The operation begins now. There's a quiet irony in teaching wisdom the moment you realize the lesson you're sharing is the one you most urgently need to hear. Seneca, Rome's most celebrated Stoic teacher, often ended his letters with this humbling truth. I write these words not because I've mastered them, but because I'm forever a student of them. That's the beautiful paradox of inner strength. The act of guiding others reveals where your own foundations still shake. Think of a parent calming their child's nightmares while secretly battling their own fears, or a therapist guiding patients through grief while navigating fresh loss. This isn't hypocrisy, it's humanity. The Stoics called it docendo discimus. By teaching, we learn. Here's how this transforms personal growth. When you explain a principle like Amor Fati to a friend struggling with a breakup, you're not just offering them a lifeline, you're rewiring your own neural pathways. A startup founder I know discovered this after hosting weekly Stoic meetups. The first time I taught negative visualization, she confessed, I realized I hadn't practiced it myself in months. That gap between preaching and practicing became her most honest compass. Modern psychology confirms this phenomenon. The protege effect shows that people who teach concepts score higher on retention and implementation than those who merely study them. Your brain treats shared wisdom as high-stakes knowledge worth consolidating. So here's your closing challenge, one that turns passive learning into active legacy. This week, don't just consume Stoicism, curate it for someone else. Pick one principle that's resonated with you, perhaps the dichotomy of control or premeditatio malorum, and teach it to a colleague over coffee, a sibling during a walk, or even an online stranger in a forum. Notice how the act of articulation forces clarity. A firefighter taught his crew Seneca's inner citadel technique during wildfire season, only to find himself relying on those same words when trapped by shifting flames weeks later. Hearing my own advice echo in my head, he said, made it click in a way solo reading never had. But here's the crucial nuance Seneca embodied: teach with humility, not authority. Start sentences with, here's what I'm wrestling with, instead of, here's what you should do. When a nurse shared Stoic journaling techniques with her patients, she'd begin by confessing her own struggles to stay consistent. That vulnerability didn't weaken her message, it made the philosophy breathe. People don't need perfect sages, they need fellow travelers holding lanterns along the same dark road. Why does this final lesson crown all others? Because Stoicism was never meant to be hoarded like gold in a vault. It thrives when passed hand to hand, polished by each generation's grip. Imagine Seneca himself, wealthy advisor to emperors, choosing to write letters to his friend Lucilius instead of lofty treatises. He knew wisdom grows when planted in the soil of real relationships. Your turn. Share one Stoic insight this week, not as an expert but as a fellow seeker. Notice how the principle deepens in your own life as you watch it take root in another's. That's the secret the greatest teachers never advertise. Every lesson you give is also a mirror. What you most long to say aloud is what your soul is whispering for you to hear. Consider this your blueprint for unshakable strength and magnetic presence. 25 lessons from Seneca, forged in the fires of ancient wisdom and battle tested across centuries. From mastering the art of negative visualization to transforming anger into fuel, from curating your inner circle with surgical precision to treating time as your most sacred currency, these aren't just philosophical concepts. They're survival tools for a world that's equal parts chaos and opportunity. Each lesson is a brick in your inner citadel, a step toward becoming the kind of person who doesn't just endure storms but learns to dance in the rain. Think back to the first lesson, distinguishing what's within your control from what isn't. That single shift in perspective alone can evaporate half your daily stress. Or recall the power of Amor Fati, where setbacks become your greatest teachers. Remember the journaling exercise that exposes how much energy you waste on mental quicksand. These practices aren't abstract ideas, they're levers you can pull today to reshape your reality. But here's the truth no Stoic will sugarcoat: wisdom untested is just decoration. These lessons only come alive when you do, so let's make this concrete. Scroll back through these 25 principles and let one lightning bolt, just one, strike you right now. Maybe it's the mirror test where you audit your integrity each night. Maybe it's the premeditation of adversity, rehearsing life's worst-case scenarios so they lose their fangs. Whatever it is, that's your starting point, your mission. Put it into practice before sunset. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, today. Because Stoicism isn't a philosophy to admire behind glass like a museum exhibit. It's a forge where you're both the blacksmith and the metal. And the world needs more unshakable souls, people who radiate calm in chaos, who turn obstacles into stepping stones, who lead not with loudness but with depth. So tell me in the comments, which lesson will you wield first? Tag someone who needs this Stoic fire as much as you did, because the best way to master these truths is to share them. And remember, this isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Every time you choose effort over complaint, purpose over distraction, or courage over comfort, you're not just studying Stoicism. You're living it. Now go build something the world can't ignore.